Hello everyone, this is Brennan here from bshep.net, and in this tutorial we're going to be making an advanced audio visualizer. And I'm really sorry for not having this tutorial out sooner, but anyway, let's get to talking about this tutorial. So this tutorial was requested by Sanjay Pandit. He wanted me to make a tutorial on how to make basically a more advanced audio visualizer. So as you can see here, this is my example of a more advanced audio visualizer. He also asked if I could make cubes bouncing on top of other cubes that are moving vertically, and I added this cube in just as a side thing, just to add an extra bar. So as you can see, both of the cubes, he asked if I could make two different cubes or just cubes bouncing on top of other cubes, just like this. This is what I imagine he meant, and I hope this is what you meant, or what he meant, if you're watching this tutorial. So we're going to make this. Let's start by creating all of these cubes. Let's go ahead and jump into Blender. Okay, so here we are in Blender. This is version 2.68, and I just went into front view right there, or you can press numpad 1 on the keyboard. And then you press 5 to go in orthographic view. So it says front ortho, so now we're in front view. Let's go ahead and duplicate this cube, move it to the left, and let's turn on snapping. Vertex snapping. Let's press GX, hold down Control, hover your cursor over the corner or the vertice of this cube, which is right there. And now it snaps it right up against this cube in the middle. And let's go ahead and duplicate this cube again, move it all the way to the right. GX on the keyboard, hold down Control, and there it is, right up against the cube. Now let's go ahead and change these colors of these cubes. Let's start with this one on the very left. Let's change this name to yellow. To yellow. And let's make each one its own individual material. And the way we do that is just by clicking on this number right here. It's number 3. There we go. Now it has its own name. Green. Let's change it to green. Neon type green. And let's change this to blue. This looks kind of like a mustard yellow. Make it a little bit lighter. Change this, make this its own material, and let's change this to blue. So this will be blue, this will be green, and this will be yellow. And let's go ahead and name these cubes. This will be yellow, this will be green, and this will be blue. Alright, now let us add another cube. Let's add 2 cubes. Duplicate this. Let's scale these cubes down about that small. It's probably about, let's just say, duplicate this, Alt S, and S negative 5, wait, S negative 0.5. So maybe about S negative 0.2. Maybe we have 3 Blender units, so S negative 0.3. About 3 Blender units down, scale it about that small. Should be good. And let's go into front view. No, actually we don't need to. Let's create a material for these two. This will be orange. Orange. This will be gray. 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 Yes, spelled right. Orange and gray. Let's change this to orange. It's a good orange color. It's actually darker than the one in the tutorial, I think, but that's alright. Let's change this to gray. Alright, now let's set the origin points to all of these cubes right here, and we won't really need to mess with the origins on these, so let's begin by selecting this cube, selecting the top of this cube, select cursor to selected, and Control-Shift-Alt-C on the keyboard. It's a lot of buttons, but Control-Shift-Alt-C, origin to 3D cursor. That's what we want to select. It'll set the origin to the top of this cube. Now let's move this cube all the way down. Let's press GZ on the keyboard, hold down Control to snap to this vertex. And now, it's just like in the tutorial animation, or the video, the intro that I made, preview actually. This will now scale downwards. This we want to scale upwards, so we'll set the origin point to the bottom of the cube. Let's select the bottom. Actually, I have face select mode selected, so there's vertex, edge, and I have face selected. So let's do Shift S, cursor to selected again, go back into object mode, Control Shift Alt C, origin to 3D cursor. So I set the origin to 3D cursor. Now we would like this origin to come, we would like this cube to scale horizontally. So let's go into edit mode, let's select this to see through this cube, select the face that we want, Shift S, cursor to selected, Control Shift Alt C, origin to 3D cursor. Now it will scale horizontally to the right, and that's perfect. That's just what we want. So now we have all of them scaling the right directions. And let's begin by moving this cube down and actually snapping it to the top, or actually now it would be the bottom of this cube, basically, because the top is going up and the bottom is staying down, but it's upside down. It's almost like it is. Otherwise it would be like this one. The top is going up and the bottom staying where it's supposed to be. So let's select this cube, and in the tutorial, in the original file, I set this to, I added a floor constraint. So I'm going to add the floor constraint, and this is called yellow. So we would like the target to be yellow, because the floor will be the yellow cube. So there we go. It stays on the floor like it's supposed to. Only thing is that it doesn't stay on. Well, actually it does, but we want it to stay in the same position. So we'll select sticky and use rotation. So now it won't go anywhere after it touches it. Stay in the same position. We actually don't need this because it's not a rigid body, as this will be a rigid body. So now this will be going up and down and scaling at the same time. So let's set this, let's go to animation. Let's click on I location, Z location. It will be moving on the Z location, Z axis on location. And let's go ahead and select our music. Bake sound F curves. And always make sure you're at the very first frame of the animation. Otherwise, if you're over here, it won't start till frame 170. And mine was at 0, so it will start from the beginning. Starts animate. Whoops. Starts animating from the very beginning. So as you can see, it's starting to animate. Starting to jump by itself, and it actually should be parented to this cube. So let's go ahead and do that. Select this cube and select the yellow cube. Control P on the keyboard, select object, so now it will parent itself to this object. So the parent is now the yellow cube. Move this down, actually move back because I've set the keyframe to that. Probably just set this to that location. It doesn't work, so we will have to go into edit mode and move it up. Move this cube against that one and move it down to right there. Set the cursor and it moves back, so we might have to move this by itself. And then set the origin somewhere like there. And now we will set the scaling of this one, this object. Let's go ahead and select key, or actually first we have to set scaling. Select the Z scale. We want it to scale on the Z axis downwards. So we click on key, bake sound to F curves, bake our music, bake it to the sound or music. And now it will animate with the cube bouncing on top of it. But sometimes there are problems. This is obviously having a problem. And what we can just do is scale this up. But that's the basic idea, just to get this cube jumping on top of the other. So there we go. It jumps on top of the other cube. That's just what we want. It's pretty. There we go. Starting to jump. That's perfect. So the origin should be set somewhere up high because it's parented and everything has to do with that. So excuse me, let's select this orange cube and let's go to the physics tab. Let's select rigid body. This will be a rigid body active. The type will be active. And we'll select dynamic. Mass will stay at 1. Let's change this to a capsule. Change the rotation to 0. Translation will stay at 0.040, 0.04, and that's it for this. If you press Alt A on your keyboard, it should animate, it should drop to the ground. If not, something is wrong. There we go. You have to start from the very beginning. And to set the length of this animation, you want to go to the Scene tab and set the rigid body cache to longer. So if you want to do 400 frames, let's set this to 400, and we will bake this. Free all bakes, click on Bake All Dynamics. Now it's baked, the whole animation, and it falls to the ground through this cube. That's not what we want. We want this to bounce on top of this, just like a normal cube should. So, or at least in this case, we want it to bounce. This cube kind of jumps and size and scales, and this one will just be, we just want it to bounce or jump kind of high. It goes up to about there somewhere. So let's go ahead and add a limit location and a limit rotation. Let's select minimum and maximum on all of these, as well as all of these these different axes. We do not want it to rotate, so we added a limit rotation constraint. It constrains this cube, doesn't let it move anywhere else, doesn't let it rotate. That's not what we want at all, because it would rotate and fall off the cube. We want it to stay on top. So let's set this minimum Y to 2 and 2. That doesn't work, so I think it would be 0.1 and 0.1. Yes, that's right. Minimum x, we just leave it 0. And because we don't want it moving anywhere else. Minimum z, we want to set to 6.7. Actually, 0, I think it was maximum z, 6.7. That's right. There we go. And the minimum will just be left at 0. The setting for this will be, we'll go to the physics tab, make this a rigid body, but it will be passive. So, and then we'll select animated because it's animated, and it's going to be passive because it's not going to be a rigid body. We don't want it to be. So this should work. Actually, I have to bake this again, I think. It's free all bakes, bake all dynamics. And yes, it works. It actually goes through, which we do not want. That might be... Let me do free all bakes. Yes, that's because of the origin point and where it is. So we will set this to box. See how that works. Doesn't work too well. Let's just leave it at convex hull. Okay, that works. Let's leave it there. And we want to animate this. This needs to be moving. So let's go ahead and select I, scaling. Let's select key, bake sound to F curves. Let's select our music, bake sound to F curves. And whoops, I did the wrong thing. I wasn't supposed to bake it to all of these. I'm supposed to only bake it to the Z scale. So I'm going to select only Z scale, or you can select it down here. Key, bake sound to F curves, and select our music, bake sound to F curves. Now it should animate. Yes, it's animating, and it's making the cube bounce. And actually, it is supposed to be moving more than that. Let's see, minimum Z is 0. So the minimum Z is about negative 0.07, I think. Or negative 0.7, something like that. 0.7, negative 0.7. Yes, that's right. So now it will bounce whenever this cube moves. So that's perfect. That's just what we want. Let's go ahead and add the music in here. Whoops. Just UV editing and scripting. Let's go add in not a image, a sound. Let's add in this sound. And it's perfectly flush against the first frame, which is just what we want. And now, there we go. And we need to do this right here, which is optional. You don't have to do this, but this is just what I did. So I'm going to select scaling, press I, scaling, select the x-axis because it's scaling on the x-axis, and let's select key, bake sound to F curves, select the music. There we go. Now it should all animate. Yes, it all animates. Everything's working as it should. So that's how you make a more advanced audio visualizer. Thank you so much for watching. And just comment, like, subscribe. And I hope to see you again. Thanks for watching my video.